This is a homemade veggie burrito. It's packed full of protein, it's absolutely delicious, it's super fresh, and it's crispy on the outside. If you come and follow me along this recipe, you'll see how you can create this too at home. It honestly is a great veggie meal to add in to your week. So the first thing is we're going to make the tortilla shells, the flatbreads, the wrap, the, bread to the butter. Bad analogy, but you know what I mean. We're going to make it. If you're not interested in making it because you're like, Del, I ain't got time, it's busy, it's the week, get a jog on, you can fast forward. I've put it in the chapter list down the bottom and you can see where we start doing the prep for the burrito. But if you do have a little bit of time in your hands, I'm going to show you how to make another dough. So this is different from other ones that I've made. This is really for a nice soft white tortilla. Yeah, crazy with just a few different ingredients what you can really make. So this is a little bit different and it doesn't have yeast in it, so it doesn't need to rise. It just needs maybe 15 minutes of resting. So we'll get it all together. So I've got 1.5 cups of flour. Pop that in. A good half a teaspoon of salt. Half a teaspoon of baking powder, and then them things just mix them all together so that they're not all sat on top, so that they're all incorporated in the flour. And then we're going to add 2.5 teaspoons of veg oil. 2. A little one. And then half a cup of nice warm water. You want it a little bit warm, so when you put your finger in it, we've done it before, that you can feel that there's a difference, but you don't want it boiling hot. And that's half a cup of water. Add that in. And then just mix it all together. We're going to form it into a dough. So I've started to mix it after adding in that water, and I can see this actually looks a little bit dry. Again, not ideal, but I am actually going to add a tiny little bit of more water to this now because I can just feel that this is going to be too dry. So about another half of a half cup I've added in there. Oh, and that's much better. Everything has incorporated from the pan, from the bowl. It looks a little bit sticky, but we'll give it a knead, and I think this is going to be about right. So that was half a cup of water, half a cup of warm water, and I actually added about another half of that half cup. Yeah, and now we're just going to work this into a dough. We'll need it for probably 5 minutes. We want to get all that gluten stretched and working. So I've kneaded this dough for really about 5 minutes. This is great if you had maybe a mixer, because then you could speed up the process a little bit more, but you do really need to work it for that 5 minutes or so because you need to get the gluten to start to stretch. So see here, the dough's starting to bounce back, which is great. Now I am worried that maybe this dough is a little tiny bit dry. I don't know if you can see here, but these little creases sort of tell me that maybe it's not quite hydrated enough. I don't know, but that's home cooking, I'm saying many a time. But we're gonna let it rest for 15 to 20 minutes and then we'll come back to it and roll it out. So the best way to let this dough rest is to wrap it up in a little bit of cling film, because then it will just provide a little bit of warmth for it while it's resting. And here's the dough. As you can see, much softer, has come together. I definitely do think it needed that extra bit of water, but it's looking good. So this dough here is enough for 4. We're going to cut it into 4. Make them a little bit more round and roll them out. And then we're just going to cook them on the stove. Now these are to make large tortillas, so we are going to make them quite thin. Keep them as round as you can while you roll. But this isn't a flatbread that has like a little bit of volume to it. This is a tortilla that we're going to roll as big as we can. So they will be quite thin, meaning again they're going to cook really, really fast and be nice and soft. Keep turning. if it starts to stick, just put a tiny bit of flour there. You don't want too much flour. Oh, okay. And you kind of want to roll these out so that they are as big as the ones you get in the shop. I've got a pan here, and ideally I want these to be as big as the bottom of the pan, like that. So I'm going to roll them all out, and then we're just going to cook them. If they start getting a bit wonky, go to the corner where it's funny and roll it out. Give it a small turn and roll it again. For these, it's definitely the rounder, the better. And see the way that they're not really sticking so much? That's because they've got veg oil in them. And that's what makes them a little bit more supple and a little bit better for when we cook them. And that's it, they're all rolled out. As you can see, they're nice and thin. You know, you can almost see the colour of my hand through the dough, and that's what we want. We're going to cook these on a medium to low heat because we don't want them to dry out. They shouldn't, because they have the veg oil in them, but if you cook them too hot, they will go crisp quite quickly. So we're going to pan fry them, and then we're just going to put this burrito together. So I just put a little bit of oil in the pan, and then I've wiped it so you can see it's glistening slightly, but we don't want a lot in there. And then on a medium temperature, we're going to add in the tortilla. And then we're just going to cook it until it's done. These are going to be super fast because they're super thin. And then when they're finished, we're going to place them on a plate with a tea towel, and we're just going to keep them in there so that they stay nice and warm and don't get crisp. This side, as you can see, doesn't really have any colour on it. That's because I took out most of the oil from the pan, and you know, this is the first one. So always, like anything, we're making a pancake, we're making a bit of bread in the pan, the first one never seems to have as much colour as the last. And there you go. That looks like the sort of tortilla you'd buy in the shop. We're just going to cook the next ones, and we're going to sit them on this cloth and cover them up while we do that. So that's that one done. Now, what I love about this veggie burrito is it really is about whatever you've got in the fridge, but it's super simple, super quick. You know, if you've got leftover rice, even better, so you don't have to cook it. You can kind of have it all together really, really fast. But I kind of like to go like fajita vibes for my insides of the things that I'm going to cook. So we only need to cook the mushrooms and the peppers with the onion and have the rice cooked, and then we just need to warm up the black beans with a little bit of seasoning and some other bits. So it's all very easy to kind of get together. So all I'm going to do is get it all chopped up and add it in here, because we'll just cook it all in the pan at the same time. I'm only making this for one, so I would say half a red pepper is absolutely plenty. And what I like to do is just cut it really fine, nice and fine, because then it's going to cook really fast. And if you have a little bit of this left over and don't use it all in the burrito, you can then have it the next day in a sandwich. You know, it's multifunctional and just really delicious. As you can see here, I've got two types of onion, only because I had some chopped up from earlier and I've got this weird bit left. So I'm just gonna take the root off, maybe cut around that. We could use some of them bits. And then this one, just finely slice. Add that in there. Add these guys in there. A little bit of garlic, just because it's a little bit of extra flavour. I did have two, but I actually think I'm just going to use one. And then the mushrooms again. nice and fine, because we're going to cook this at a very hot heat, and we just kind of really want them to char and be able to cook in that time too. So yeah, think fajitas, you know, like when you go to like, oh my god, I don't know, like in the 90s when you used to go to like a Mexican restaurant and they'd bring out the tray of fajitas and be like, oh, here we go. I kind of want that, you know, it's kind of, I don't necessarily know if it's Mexican, maybe it's more Cajun, but yeah, that's the vibe. That's the vibe we're going for here, because it just makes it really, really tasty inside. And you know what? I don't think I need that last mushroom, because again, I think this is probably enough for one. In fact, it's probably going to be too much. We're just going to make like a nice little bit of kind of tomatoey salsa to go on the top. As you can see, I had some very questionable tomatoes. This won't be going in it, but we're going to go on top of it. It's just nice to have a little bit of freshness. So that, and then we'll just dice up this guy. Get rid of the little core bit. I'm going to add a little bit of coriander. And you know, if you wanted some onion in there, add some onion, but I don't have any left. So if you want to put some in there, go for it. So we're going to go a little bit of that. And into this, I'm going to go a little bit of hot sauce, because I've got a bit. If you had some of the chipotle tabasco, that would be amazing. It's totally up to you what you put in it. Anyway, back to the salsa. I'm just going to add a tiny bit of some salt and pepper. And a little bit of lime. Oh, limes. I love them. They're so good. And that's that. I mean, it might not be classic, but it's just gonna be this yummy fresh thing that we're gonna have on top of the burrito. And for this stuff, what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna make like a little spice blend, which we're gonna add right at the end when it's finished cooking. So we want a good bit of pepper, some salt. If you have maybe in the cupboard a Cajun spice, then like use that. You don't need to make something, but I don't have that, and I'm just going to put together some kind of spicy-ish flavours that will just be yum in a veggie burrito, I think. I'm going to use a little bit of smoked paprika and a little bit of chili powder. I also have some ground cumin, which will just be lovely. A little bit of that. That's about half a teaspoon. The smallest bit of cinnamon, because this stuff is quite pungent. And a little bit of chili flake, because I don't have any fresh chili. And that's it, that's the spice, that's the spice blend. Gosh, wow, that was hard, so difficult to get out. That's the spice blend. We might not use all of that, but if you don't use it, you can keep a little bit in the cupboard and use it next time. But yeah, that's kind of it. You know, it's just for something to go with this. Just so that them veggies have a little bit more punch in them, you know? Just before we get into cooking the stuff for the burrito, I just thought I'd give you a quick introduction. I'm Del, this is Dishes with Del, and yeah, I'm just all about teaching you guys how to cook delicious food. When you think that maybe you're not very good at it, I promise you, you know, food comes from the heart, you know? If you love it and you're interested in it, it's always gonna, you know, flow through your fingers and into the creations that you make. That is what I'm here to hopefully get you to realise, that it's not as difficult as maybe it turns out to be. I'm not very good at reading recipes. I'd much prefer to sit and watch a video and see how it comes together and what it looks like, and then, you know, it's easier to rinse and repeat. So that's it. I'm here for you people that hate reading recipes. If this is the kind of content that you're really enjoying, let me know. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and you know, if there's something you really want cooked, also let me know that too. If you ever want the recipes for anything that I make, you can go to my website, which is linked in the description down below. And yeah, that's about it. Let's get on with the mise en place, shall we? Off to the veg. And the other thing that we're gonna put in this burrito is a little bit of refried beans. Well, it's a little bit of black beans, but we're gonna kind of make them like refried. So what we'll do, we're gonna drain these off, and in a pan, we're gonna cook a little bit of garlic and maybe some chili flakes and a little bit of that spice mix that we've got for the veggies too, just a little bit in there. And then we're gonna add these in with a touch of water, cook them down, and then mash them up a little bit. So they're gonna cook a little bit more and kind of have this like refried bean texture about them to add into the burrito. This burrito is great because it's full of like loads of things with protein. It's really delicious, and even if you are a meat eater, I mean, it's great. It's a really, really delicious veggie burrito, and we eat it quite a lot here at Dishes with Del HQ. It's you know, it's a quick and easy dinner. So I've just got here in the pan a little bit of veg oil, a little bit of garlic, and some of them spices, and we're going to put them on the stove, cook them for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to add some of the beans. So in this pan, we're just cooking off them spices and cooking off that garlic. We'll just cook that for a minute or two, and then we're just going to add the beans to it. It's as simple as that, and they're just going to get a little bit of water added to them, and we're just going to let them simmer down and cook and give them a mash and make them like quite thick. So we'll add in some of the beans. Might as well do the whole can. You can put these in the fridge and save them for later. And then to that, I'm gonna add, you know, I'm not gonna quite cover them beans, but we're gonna, you know, halfway, and we're gonna let that water boil and cook down, and then we'll give them a mash when they're starting to get thick. So I'll just move that to the back onto the higher heat, and we're gonna get the veggies cooked. Them beans will take about 5 to 8 minutes. And now we're gonna do the veggies. We wanna get this pan stinking hot. We're gonna put a tiny bit of oil in there, only the smallest bit. The one thing about cooking is that you should often use visual cues as well as like nose cues and eye cues. You know, you need to use all your senses when cooking. This pan, we are visibly going to be able to see that it's getting hot, because the oil will start to become thin, and it is going to just probably start smoking a little bit. That's what we want for these veggies, to sear. We don't want them to sweat, we want them to sear. They want to go in. We're not going to touch them. We're going to leave them on one side as they go in for as long as we can before we get too tempted to turn them. I don't know if you can see this, but I certainly can feel it. You know, the oil is very, very loose. This pan is getting hot. I can also visually see in the middle that it's getting nice and hot. So we're going to do it. We're going to put the veggies in, and then we are not going to touch them. Pop them in and leave them on one side for at least 2 minutes. Can you see how this pan's smoking around the edges? That's what we want. We do not want these to not get a good hard sear on one side. So I reckon this has been about 1.5 minutes. Do not be tempted. Leave it as long as you physically can. Okay, so that has had 2 minutes on that side. We're going to give it a quick toss. Spread it back out again. And see this? This is what I'm talking about. We're getting that char on the vegetables. That's the sugar releasing from the veg, and it's searing and caramelizing in the pan. That is what we want. We've flipped it over. We're going to leave that for 2 more minutes. We're just going to put the tiny amount of veg oil in there again. And then we're going to add our spices. We're not going to add it all, just a good shake on. Okay, no, we are going to add it all. And we're going to let them spices cook for just a minute, and we'll be done. In fact, we're just going to add a tiny drop of water, just so any of them caramelised bits on the bottom of the pan can be introduced. Just do it little by little though. And that's it. 4 minutes on the stove, veg is cooked. Turn it off. And that's ready to plate up. So the beans have been cooking, that liquid has reduced, and what we want to do now is mash them. So we're going to give them a mash. So it's going to look something like that, and then we're going to cook down that liquid so they become quite thick, and yeah, then you've got refried beans. And there you go. After maybe 2 minutes of cooking, the juice has kind of disappeared and made its way back into the beans. And that's it, because you're going to leave this to one side and it will thicken up a little bit more as it cools. All right, we've got everything together. So now we just need to build the burrito and do the one thing that I think a lot of places don't, and we're going to sear it off in the pan. It means you get this crazy little crunch on the outside, it holds all the things together, and yeah, it's just stellar. So the only other thing is I've warmed up my rice, everything else is hot, and I'm just going to put a little bit of lime and maybe some of the juice too, and some salt and pepper. Mix that together. That's the rice, got a little bit of a season and a little bit something extra. And then I've also got some grated cheese, a little bit of avocado and some spinach. And then we're gonna put it all together and make this into a banging veggie burrito. So what I did is when I made my tortillas, I took them off and I put them in a little bit of a damp towel so that they stay nice and soft. So you get this lovely, soft tortilla shell to work with. So what we're gonna do, we are gonna put some spinach, and now this bit is basically how Billy Big Ballsy you're feeling. You know, the more stuffing you put in, the harder it's going to roll, the harder it's going to stay together. If you had a shop bought one, maybe it's going to be a little bit rounder, so you've probably got a little bit more to work with. But just as long as you've got enough to fold in the sides and roll over the top, we should be good. But if you put too much in there, it will just burst open. So we'll go for a little bit of avo. It's just quite nice to have a whole avocado in there. And then a good bit of cheese, because that's just delicious. And here you can see where these beans have got thick, you know, much thicker than they were. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of paste them on there. Pop all this stuff kind of back on top. Lime rice. And then the fajitari mushrooms. Again, as much as you're feeling confident to roll with. I think that this is probably a good amount. So what you need to do, you know, fold it into the middle first, and you fold up your end like that, and then push it all in. Ta-da! Perfectly rolled little burrito. And then we're going to put it in the pan and seal the outsides. And now for what I think is the most important part of any burrito is sealing it on the outside. So you want a little bit of veg oil in a pan, just a touch, and you want to make sure that it's nice and warm, and we're going to sit the burrito in it just like that, and we're going to seal off each side of it. See that? That's what I'm talking about. No one does that when you buy a burrito out. You can just sit it up against the edge to hold it all together. And giving it a sear off too, this is going to melt your cheese in the middle. And there it is, sealed off. Honestly, it's like the best thing you can do to your burritos at home. And then we're just going to finish it off. We're going to serve it up with a little bit of the tomato salsa, a little dollop of some sour cream, some homemade pickled onions, and just to finish it off and make you feel fancy, a little sprig of coriander. Now if that doesn't look like a veggie meal you want to eat, I don't know who you are. I'm also going to add a little squeeze of lime just to finish it off. And there's only one thing left to do, isn't there? How freaking yum does that look? Watch me get it all down myself now. Honestly, if you're a meat eater, I'm telling you now, you're gonna love this. Because the mushrooms and peppers are deep in flavour, which almost gives that meaty addition to it. If you're a vegetarian, you're gonna love it too. I absolutely love this meal. Like I said, I think it's one of my favourites. I could eat it every day of the week. And with the elevation of your homemade tortillas, it really is incredible. But you know what? Even with a shop bought tortilla, it's absolutely great. You need to give this one a go, honestly guys. Thanks for tuning in for another week, and I'll see you next week with another great Dishes with Del. See you soon. Honestly, it's just delicious. See you later.